Have you ever looked at someone and felt something was off? They laughed at your jokes, they hugged you tight, they said, "I'm proud of you." And yet, something inside you flinched, something ancient, instinctual, a whisper, almost primal, echoed through your body. This person doesn't mean it. But how do you explain that? There's no betrayal, no fight, no obvious lie, just that strange weight in the room when they enter, that tightness in your chest when you share good news, that feeling that their smile doesn't quite reach their eyes. You're not imagining it. You're not being dramatic. What you're sensing is the shadow, the hidden unconscious force Carl Jung described as the dark twin of the self, the part of the psyche that holds everything. We repress envy, resentment, insecurity, hatred, and the terrifying part, some people carry that darkness while wearing a mask of light. This isn't about paranoia. It's about learning to see beyond the words, to feel what the body is telling you, to decode the signs before the damage is done, because secret hatred is not loud. It's subtle, it smiles, it claps, it congratulates you, while silently resenting every step you take forward. In this video, we'll reveal 8 psychological signs, grounded in Jungian theory and brutally real experience, that someone close to you may secretly hate you, not dislike, hate. And by the end, I'll give you a tool, a perspective shift that will forever change the way you read people. Because truth is, not everyone in your circle is in your corner. Some are just close enough to study your every move, waiting for the perfect moment to strike without leaving a mark. Let's begin. The joke that cuts. How sarcasm hides contempt. They laugh, you laugh too, but inside, something stings. It's subtle, so subtle you almost ignore it. A joke about your weight, a funny remark about your past failure, a sarcastic comment wrapped in a smile. "Wow, you're really trying this time, huh?" The room chuckles, but your soul tightens, and when you call it out, you're told, "Relax, you're too sensitive. It was just a joke." But what if it wasn't? What if that wasn't humor at all, but hate dressed in charm? Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But what about those who refuse that journey inward? They don't examine their darkness. They export it, project it, turn it into weapons coated in sarcasm and delivered with a grin." These people don't need to scream to hurt you. They bleed you with laughter. They study your wounds, then poke them in public. They know your insecurities, your traumas, your soft spots, and they wrap their cruelty in humor so no one notices, not even you at first. This is emotional warfare, and sarcasm is their sniper rifle. Because here's the truth Jung pointed to. When someone has not integrated their own shadow, they will try to humiliate yours. They will use your light to expose what they lack. And instead of healing themselves, they make you feel like you're the problem. For feeling hurt, for reacting, for speaking up. Let's break down the signs. Their jokes always have a target, and it's you. There's a pattern. They joke only when you're winning. They escalate around others, never in private. When confronted, they gaslight you. You leave interactions feeling drained, anxious, small. This isn't just their humor style. It's not about you being too sensitive. It's about them being too afraid to confront their inferiority, their jealousy, their unresolved shame. So instead they twist your self-worth and laugh while doing it. In Jungian psychology, this is called projection. The disowned parts of the self, the weak, jealous, angry, or insecure, are cast onto another. You become the mirror of what they cannot face, and they don't even know they're doing it. But your body knows, your chest tightens, your smile fades, you second-guess yourself. And after every interaction, you rehearse what you should have said, because deep down you feel it's not right. Let me tell you this, you are not weak for feeling hurt. You are not dramatic for noticing the sting. You are not imagining it. You are feeling what the soul feels: betrayal, disguised as bonding, because real friends may tease you, but they never leave wounds. Their humor lifts. It never cuts. They laugh with you, not at you. They don't corner you in front of others, then act surprised when you bleed. So if you keep laughing to survive, if you keep smiling to avoid confrontation, if you're laughing in public but crying in private, it's time to ask yourself, is this really friendship or psychological erosion? And here's the darkest part. Some people will keep joking until there's nothing left of your self-esteem. And when you finally break, they'll say, "Wow, I didn't know you were so fragile." No, you weren't fragile. You were being sliced by sarcasm 1,000 times in silence. And now you know, but it doesn't stop there, because sometimes the hate isn't hidden in laughter. Sometimes it's hidden in help, the knife in the hug, how subtle sabotage disguises itself as concern. They forgot to tell you. That meeting, that opportunity, that one detail that could have changed everything. "Oh, I thought I mentioned it. Sorry. It just slipped my mind. Once, maybe twice. Coincidence, but 3 times, 4 times, always when it matters most." That's not forgetfulness. That's strategy. Sabotage doesn't always arrive with a scream. Sometimes it knocks gently, bearing gifts and false concern. Sometimes it hugs you while quietly rearranging the bricks of your foundation. And the worst part? It's always someone you trust, the person who calls themselves your biggest supporter, the one who offers advice that somehow always leads to failure, the one who encourages you, but only after you've already missed the moment. They don't attack, they don't argue, they simply don't show up when it counts. And you're left wondering, is it me? Am I asking too much? You're witnessing something Jungian in nature, a psychological phenomenon that lives in the shadow of the ego, inferiority masked as loyalty. Carl Jung warned us, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. And when someone sees you growing, stepping forward, building something they've neglected in themselves, they don't confront their stagnation. They quietly try to keep you small. Not with direct resistance, but through missed calls, convenient delays, bad advice wrapped in affection. They say things like, "I just didn't want you to get disappointed. I thought this would be better for you. You're moving too fast. Slow down." But every time you listen, you lose a little more momentum, a little more belief in yourself, a little more time. These aren't enemies. These are people who sit next to you, cheer for you in public, but flinch when you rise, not because they want you to fail, but because your success makes them feel like they already have. In Jungian language, this is the shadow of comparison. Unconsciously, they measure themselves against you, and every step you take forward feels like a step they should have taken. So instead of rising, they reach for the only power they believe they have left: sabotage. But not the obvious kind. No, this is refined, invisible, polite. A whisper in your ear that makes you doubt your idea, a delayed text that causes you to miss the opportunity, a forgotten RSVP to your big moment. They don't hold you back with chains. They do it with doubt, with timing, with silence. And the moment you call it out, they act wounded. "I was only trying to help. I didn't think it was a big deal." They turn your suspicion into guilt, your intuition into overreaction, your clarity into confusion, because sabotage becomes harder to spot when it's wearing a friendly face. So ask yourself, who always disappears when your life speeds up? Who gives advice that sounds kind but weakens your resolve? Who's always too busy on your biggest days but never too busy for drama? That's not support. That's possession in disguise, because some people don't want to lose you, but only as long as you stay beneath them. And if you rise too far, too fast, they won't fight you. They'll slow you down quietly, softly, like a hand on your ankle as you try to swim. Jung said, The most dangerous things are those that pretend to care while feeding the ego's need to dominate. And that's what this is. Not protection, control. But here's the real danger. Sometimes you start believing them. You start internalizing the sabotage. You dim your light, not because they asked you to, but because you were trained to. That's the final betrayal. Not what they did to you, but what they made you do to yourself. And the next time you get an opportunity, a dream, a door, you'll hesitate. You'll remember their voice, their concern, their absence, and you'll wonder, what if they're right? Which brings us to the next betrayal, the most silent, the most common, and the most difficult to confront, the hidden war, when every win turns into a competition. You share your good news, a promotion, a breakthrough, a long-awaited moment of joy. You expect a smile, a hug, maybe even a little celebration, but instead you get this. Oh, wow. Well, guess what just happened to me? Nice. But I actually did something similar last year. That's cool, but it's not that big of a deal, right? And just like that, your joy is minimized. Your moment is stolen. The spotlight you earned gets dimmed by someone else's urgency to shine brighter. You didn't sign up for a competition, but somehow you've been entered into one. This is what Jung called the shadow's envy. A hidden battlefield where insecure egos try to level the playing field. Not by rising, but by pulling others down. At first you tell yourself, maybe they're just trying to relate. You give them the benefit of the doubt. But over time the pattern repeats. You win. They one-up, you rise. They redirect, you shine. They shrink the room. It's subtle but deliberate, because they're not interested in celebrating you. They're interested in outshining you, not in the name of growth, but in the name of survival. Their self-worth is so fragile, your happiness threatens it. And Jung warned us about this. He said, the brighter your light, the darker your shadow becomes in the eyes of others. Here's what happens. Your growth becomes a mirror. And when they look into it, they don't see your joy. They see their lack, their missed chances, their buried dreams. So your wins, instead of inspiring them, trigger them. And that trigger activates their inner war, one they never resolved, never acknowledged, never healed. They start keeping score. Every congratulations hides a calculation. Every compliment has a hidden clause. And every time you rise, they mentally raise the bar. For themselves or against you, you'll notice things. They don't ask questions about your success, just change the topic. Their praise feels robotic, rehearsed, hollow. They only show excitement when they're ahead, never when you are. They mirror your achievements, not to grow, but to reclaim territory. And here's the psychological twist. They may not even know they're doing it. That's how the unconscious works. When you haven't made peace with your own failures, someone else's success feels like a threat. But your gut knows. You feel that static in the air when you share good news. You sense their energy shift. The light fades from their face. The body tightens. The tone drops a degree colder. They don't say they're competing, but their soul flinches every time you soar. And when you finally call it out, they gaslight you again. You're imagining things. You're being paranoid. I'm just happy for you. Don't be weird. But you're not imagining anything. You're simply not blind to energy anymore. Because here's the dangerous part. People in secret competition don't want to destroy you. They want to keep you close, just not above. They'll tolerate your glow as long as it doesn't shine on their darkness. They'll pretend to clap, but always with one eye on the scoreboard. They'll call you friend, but see you as opponent. And eventually, you start shrinking yourself, toning down your joy, softening your wins, filtering your voice to avoid triggering their ego. That's not friendship. That's psychological captivity. So let me ask you, do you feel safe sharing your success? Does someone close to you always need to match or top your energy? Are you constantly apologizing for shining too brightly? Because if your happiness leads to tension, if your growth creates emotional distance, if your progress makes someone else pull away, you're not in a friendship, you're in a hidden war. And that war, It will exhaust you. It will make you question your light. It will convince you that joy must be earned cautiously. But there's a deeper layer still. Some don't compete. They pretend to support you, speak kindly to your face, say all the right things. But their eyes are empty. The hollow smile. How superficial kindness conceals emotional absence. They say they're proud of you. They smile when you enter the room. They comment, "That's amazing," when you share your news. But something inside you stays cold. The words are right. The tone sounds polite and still. There's no warmth, no soul, just an emptiness behind the script. Have you felt it? It's like standing in sunlight that somehow doesn't warm your skin. You hear support, but you don't feel it. You're celebrated, but you feel unseen. Their presence is there, but their essence is missing. Carl Jung warned us about this phenomenon. He called it ego dissociation, when someone becomes so emotionally cut off from their inner world that they can no longer access authentic connection. They perform kindness, they recite compassion, but their soul never enters the room. These are the people who say all the right things, but never mean them. They text, "I'm here for you," but vanish when the storm hits. They write congratulations, but never show up to celebrate. They ask, "How are you?" but don't even hear the answer. They've mastered the script of love, but completely forgotten the feeling. And the result? You walk away from every conversation feeling lonelier than before. You question your intuition. Maybe I'm just expecting too much. But no, you're not. You're just finally noticing that you're not connecting. You're being tolerated, not treasured. Because here's the secret Jung exposed. When people haven't confronted their own emotional emptiness, they lose the ability to connect authentically. They become actors, playing the role of friend, partner, family, without ever bringing their real self to the stage. And that's the pain you're feeling, the disconnect between word and energy. Here's what it looks like. They always say, "I'm proud of you," but never look you in the eye. They post support online, but don't show up in real life. They say, "I miss you," but never initiate a call. They smile, but their body leans away. Their tone is flat, their timing is off. It's a strange emptiness you can't explain, but you feel it. Your body feels it. Jung believed that the unconscious always speaks through energy before it ever speaks through words. And when someone's kindness feels hollow, it's your intuition warning you, this person's mask is flawless but their soul is missing. Let's go deeper. When you succeed, they praise you, quickly, flatly, but they don't ask questions. They don't stay in the celebration. With you, they don't sit in the joy. They don't connect. They're kind on the surface, but their energy remains on standby, because true kindness doesn't just speak, it feels. You can't fake presence. You can't fake care. Real people don't just show up when it's easy. They show up when it's soulful. They hold your hand in silence. They see you when you're invisible. They feel your victories like their own. But superficial kindness, it's a copy-paste performance, polite, clean, sterile, and ultimately dehumanizing. And the more time you spend around it, the more you begin to question your own emotional reality. Maybe I'm expecting too much. Maybe they do care, just in their own way. Maybe this is what friendship feels like. No, you're not wrong for needing warmth. You're not needy for desiring presence. You're not broken for craving real connection. You're just finally noticing that your heart has been trying to connect with a mask. So pay attention if someone's presence always feels vacant, if their praise feels rehearsed, if their kindness comes in perfectly timed messages, but never in spontaneous emotion. Then you're not loved. You're being managed. You've become part of a performance, a character in their good person storyline. And here's the danger. You start adjusting your heart to match their distance. You shrink your vulnerability. You turn down your truth. You become emotionally cautious around someone who claims to care. And that's when the hollowness spreads, not just around you, but into you. Because nothing hurts quite like being emotionally alone while physically surrounded. So ask yourself, do Their words make you feel anything? Do their actions match the script? When you cry, do they sit with you, or just send a heart emoji? Because the people who love you, really love you, don't just show up in language, they show up in spirit. And if their soul is always absent, it's time to stop calling it love. But what happens when the absence becomes more than emotional? What if the people who care begin to influence your path, your pace, your mind, not with love but with control? The soft trap. How control masquerades as care. I'm just looking out for you. You'll thank me later. I only say this because I care. At first, those words sound comforting, reassuring, even loving. But over time, they start to feel like chains. You share a dream, and they raise an eyebrow. You take a risk, and they tell you you're reckless. You express joy, and they respond with worry, not out of malice, but out of a need to contain you. And that's the trap, because this isn't obvious control. It's the soft kind. It sounds like love, looks like guidance, and feels like a warning. But behind the concern lies fear, not yours, theirs. Carl Jung once said, people will do anything to avoid facing their own soul. And one of the most subtle ways they avoid their own chaos is by trying to organize yours. Here's the truth. No one wants to admit. People who cannot control their own emotions, their own fears, their own stagnation, will try to control you instead. Not with demands, but with suggestions, not with force, but with softness. And before you realize it, you've stopped dreaming out loud. You've stopped moving forward without their approval. You've begun seeking permission instead of trusting your intuition. It happens slowly. They caution you out of new opportunities. They warn you about people you trust. They doubt your ability to handle the unknown. They paint a world where everything beyond their advice is dangerous, risky, unsafe. And because they're close to you, because they've earned your trust, you start believing them. You shrink your plans. You water down your voice. You second-guess your instincts. And they smile, because in their eyes, you're not just safe. You're back under their control. Jung believed that control is the ego's final defense against collapse. When someone feels powerless inside, they try to control what's outside. Not because they're evil, but because it gives them the illusion of stability. But here's the twist. They don't think they're controlling you. They believe they're helping you. They see themselves as wise, protective, rational. But underneath all of that is the terrifying truth. They don't trust your power. They're not afraid of your failure. They're afraid of your independence, because the more confident you become, the less you need them. And for people who base their self-worth on being needed, your freedom is a threat. So they wrap their fear in tenderness. They give you advice that sounds smart, but always leads you back to them. They become your filter, your compass, your governor, and without realizing it, you begin to internalize their voice. You stop before you act. You edit yourself before you speak. You don't move until they nod. That's not love. That's emotional conditioning. And the longer you stay, the more your inner compass goes quiet, because love was supposed to give you wings, not make you fear the sky. Let me ask you, do you feel nervous sharing big decisions with someone? Do you worry about their reaction more than your own desire? Do you feel small after their supportive conversations? That's not your intuition warning you about a bad path. That's your soul resisting manipulation, because true care empowers. It says, even if you fall, I'm here. It doesn't shrink you, it believes in you. But false care, it says, only move if I say it's safe. It keeps you dependent, doubtful, tame. And here's the heartbreaking part. You might love them, you might need them, but that doesn't make it healthy. Because when love becomes control and support becomes surveillance, you're no longer being held, you're being handled. And soon you begin to lose the one thing no one can give back once it's gone: your agency, your will, your sovereignty. But this isn't the only form of quiet betrayal, because some won't try to control you to your face. They'll destroy your reputation behind your back. The hidden tongue, how gossip becomes a weapon of the weak. You walk into the room. The energy shifts, smiles fade. The laughter dies a half second too early. Someone looks at you, then quickly looks away. No one says anything, but you feel it in your chest like a sudden drop in temperature. Something has been said, twisted, distorted, passed along with a smirk and a shrug. This is how gossip works, not with loud accusations, but with whispered doubts, not with facts, but with insinuations that stain your name without ever confronting your truth. Carl Jung wrote that what you resist persists, and what you refuse to confront within yourself, you unconsciously act out against others. Gossip is the shadow's way of waging war without taking responsibility. It is emotional cowardice wearing social camouflage. When someone doesn't have the courage to face you, they face others about you. They manipulate your image in the absence of your voice. They wound your reputation without ever drawing blood. They say things like, "I love them," but honestly, don't. Get me wrong, they're great, but have you noticed how they all delivered in a tone of faux concern, of subtle judgment, of masked superiority? Here's what's really happening. These people feel threatened by your light, your growth, your peace. And instead of asking why, instead of healing their own pain, they try to mute your power by corrupting how others see you. They create distance between you and the world, so you feel isolated, alone, confused. That's the goal of gossip, social exile. Because if they can't control you directly, they'll control the environment around you. They don't attack your actions. They question your intentions. They make others wonder, are they really that kind? Maybe they're not as authentic as they seem. Is it just me, or have they changed? And the tragedy is, you'll never hear these words. You'll only feel the echo in the silence, in the cold stares, in the sudden disconnection from people you trusted, and you'll begin to question yourself, what did I do? Why are they pulling away? Did I miss something? But the truth is, you didn't change. They changed the narrative, Jung said. The brighter your light, the darker your shadow becomes in the eyes of others. What he meant was this: when someone sees you shining, owning your truth, healing your wounds, speaking with clarity, it triggers every part of themselves they've kept buried. And instead of dealing with that darkness, they smear yours. But gossip is more than a passive aggression. It's an emotional poison, a slow erosion of trust, reputation, and connection. And the ones who do it? They'll hug you in public, comment supportive things on your posts, send you a heart emoji when you're struggling. But behind closed doors, they're architects of your isolation. And here's the most terrifying part. It works. Not because what they say is true, but because the human mind is wired to believe repeated stories, especially when they're emotionally charged. And so, your reputation begins to fracture in rooms you've never entered. Your name is whispered through filters you didn't ask for. Your essence is diluted, and when you finally notice, it's already spread too far, too deep, too late. So what can you do? You don't fight back. You don't stoop to their level. You reclaim your space with integrity. You live so truthfully that their lies become obvious echoes of their own pain. Because here's what gossip always reveals. It's never about the one being talked about. It's about the speaker, their insecurity, their envy, their internal chaos projected outward. Gossip isn't a reflection of your character. It's a confession of theirs. So next time the room goes quiet when you walk in, next time the smiles feel forced, next time the energy shifts before a single word is spoken, don't doubt yourself. Feel the truth in the silence. And remember this: if they had peace within, they wouldn't need to steal yours. But sometimes the betrayal isn't even behind your back. Sometimes it happens face to face, when they can't even celebrate your joy. The vanishing smile, when there's no joy in your success. They were. There for you when everything fell apart, when your heart broke, when the bills piled up, when your dreams felt out of reach. They were a phone call away. Back then, you were relatable, you were struggling, you were safe. But then, things began to change. You started rising, healing, building, winning, and suddenly the warmth disappeared. You send the message, "I got the job." They reply, "Cool." You share the big news, "I signed the contract." They respond with a thumbs up. Emojied, no joy, no celebration, no pride in their eyes, just a slow, cold distance, where applause should be, and the silence. It hurts more than any insult ever could, because this was supposed to be your person, your cheerleader, the one who clapped the loudest. Instead, now you find yourself shrinking your joy, watering down your wins, softening your glow, just to protect their feelings. Why? Because on some level you know the truth. Your evolution became their trigger. Carl Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And when someone hasn't faced their own stagnation, when they've buried their ambition, ignored their pain, avoided their shadow, your growth becomes a mirror, and what they see isn't your success. It's their own self-betrayal. They aren't upset with you, they're ashamed of themselves. But instead of confronting that shame, they pull away from your light. Because it's easier to disappear from your joy than to deal with their unfulfilled potential. You'll notice things. They were always around when you struggled, but now they vanish during your highs. They change the subject every time you speak about your progress. They give backhanded compliments like, "Don't let it get to your head." They remind you of how far you still have to go, never how far you've come. At first you rationalize it, maybe they're just going through something. They'll come around eventually. But deep inside, your soul feels it. This person can't hold space for your joy anymore, because your joy makes their silence louder, your peace makes their chaos harder to ignore, your glow turns up the volume. On their regret, Jung would call this the rejection of the inner gold, a refusal to acknowledge the sacred, sovereign parts of the self, projected outward as resentment toward others who found theirs. And so they retreat. Not because you changed, but because your change reminds them they didn't. Let's be clear. This isn't about arrogance. It's not about expecting everyone to clap. It's about realizing that the absence of joy can be a form of betrayal. Because if they can't feel happy for you, if they can't stand beside you in your breakthrough, the way you stood by them in their breakdown, you're not growing together anymore. You're outgrowing the dynamic, and that's okay. But what's not okay is continuing to beg for support from someone who resents your becoming. Because eventually, you stop sharing. You start dimming. You begin to question whether joy is safe at all. That's the real cost. You learn to grieve in public, but celebrate in private, as if your joy is offensive, as if your success is something to apologize for. But you don't owe anyone your shrinking, and you don't have to carry the guilt of someone else's unhealed wounds. Let me ask you, who disappears when you're doing well? Who keeps their love warm only when you're losing? Who used to clap but now just nods, because if they only show up when you're broken, they were never invested in your wholeness. And if your light makes them turn away, you're not the one who's changed. They've simply stopped pretending. But sometimes the mask doesn't slip in silence. It slips through the body, through micro-expressions, posture, tone, timing. You don't just hear the truth, you feel it. The body doesn't lie. How your intuition reads what their words hide. They said all the right things. I'm proud of you. You deserve it. I'm so happy for you. But something didn't add up. The smile came too late. The hug felt hollow. The room felt colder when they entered. And your gut, it twisted. Not because of what they said, but because of what their energy said, what their body couldn't hide. Carl Jung believed that the unconscious always speaks through the body. You can craft a sentence, you can rehearse a compliment, you can even fake a friendship, but your nervous system will always tell the truth. Think about it. Before we had language, before we learned to lie, we had instinct. We watched each other's faces, we tracked posture, tone, blink rate, breath. And now, thousands of years later, those ancient circuits still fire. Your stomach tightens when someone's energy is off. Your chest tightens before betrayal ever shows up in words. Your intuition speaks, softly, deeply, urgently. But most people, they ignore it. Why? Because we're taught to prioritize politeness over perception, to believe what's said, even when what's felt says otherwise. But you're remembering something older, deeper, realer. Here's what to look for: the smile that fades before it fully forms, a flash of teeth, no warmth, no joy behind the eyes, delayed applause. They clap but half a second too late, as if reminding themselves to react. Avoided eye contact, especially when you're sharing good news. Their gaze drifts, their body turns slightly away. Subtle, tension, tight jaw, raised shoulders, shallow breath. They're happy for you, while every cell in their body screams resistance. The hug that leans out instead of in, touch without presence, a connection without depth. And here's the twist: it's not just about them, it's about what you feel in response. Do you feel drained after being with them? Do you second-guess your instincts every time they're near? Do you feel like you're defending your joy, your ideas, your existence? Because your body is trying to protect you, it notices the static behind the smile, the friction beneath the praise, the chill in their presence. Jung believed that intuition is the language of the unconscious. It speaks not in logic, but in knowing. And when someone secretly hates you, no matter what they say, your body knows first. That discomfort in your gut, that was your first warning. That headache after the conversation, that was your energy retreating. That sudden shift in the room's temperature, that was your instinct lighting a match in the dark. But here's the real danger: most people override these signals. They gaslight themselves. They say, "I'm just being sensitive. I'm imagining things." They wouldn't lie to me. And by the time the mask finally cracks, the damage is done. But you don't have to wait for the explosion. You already feel the tremors, and that is enough. So trust the energy, not the explanation. Believe the pause in their tone. Believe the stiffness in their touch. Believe the silence that follows your good news. That's the body revealing what the ego can't admit. They're not with you. Not really. And that's not your failure. That's their fracture. Let me ask you, what are you feeling around certain people, but ignoring? Who drains you, even when they're smiling? Who says they love you, but always leaves your soul unsure? Because you already know. You knew in the hesitation. You knew in the way their eyes dimmed. You knew in the room that went cold. And now you have a choice. Ignore the body or honor it, because the body doesn't lie, and neither does the soul. But we're not done. There's one more truth to uncover, the hardest one of all. Now that you see the signs, what do you do about them? Stay with me for the conclusion and learn how to protect your peace without becoming bitter. Where fake love ends, real self-love begins. So now you've seen the signs, the sarcasm that stings, the subtle sabotage, the hidden competition, the hollow smiles, the controlling concern, the whispers behind your back, the emotional absence in your joy, and the truth your body has been screaming all along. Now comes the real question. What do you do with this truth? The old you might have tried harder, explained more, clung tighter to those who were secretly letting go of you, begged for support, shrunk to stay accepted, dimmed to be digestible, but not anymore. Because now you're awake. Now you see the masks. Now you feel what your soul was always trying to say. Not everyone in your circle is in your corner, and that doesn't mean you hate them. It doesn't mean you expose them. It doesn't even mean you confront them. It means you choose yourself. Carl Jung said, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. So look inside now. Look at the patterns you've been ignoring, the energy you've been enduring, the false love you've been calling home, and then ask yourself, what does my peace cost? Who keeps me small while calling it love? Where am I still pouring light into someone who only hands me shadows? Because here's the truth. You don't need to convince them. You don't need to win them over. You don't need their clap, their approval, or their congratulations. You need one thing: boundaries. Boundaries are not punishment. They are protection, a sacred container for your energy, your joy, your rise. So stop over-explaining. Stop justifying your growth. Stop inviting people into your life who flinch every time you shine. You are not here to soothe insecure egos. You are not here to be smaller than your potential, just to be loved. You are here to rise, and yes, it may feel lonely at first, but there's a difference between loneliness and peace. Peace is quiet because it's whole. Loneliness is loud because it's aching. What you're stepping into now isn't loneliness, it's liberation, because self-love starts where fake love ends. So take a breath and remember, you're not too sensitive, you're not imagining things, you're not asking too much, you're just no longer accepting less. And if this message awakened something in you, if it put words to the feeling you've carried for years, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment and tell me which sign hit the hardest. And if you're ready to go deeper, into the psyche, into the unconscious, into the patterns that shape everything, subscribe, because this is just the beginning. We're going darker, deeper, realer. Not to get lost in the shadows, but to finally understand them. Your journey just got real, not the end, the start of a new you.